Reality and experience. The reality you experience is shaped by the state you're in. How basic is that? We like to think that life is exactly as it is, but most of the time we're seeing life in exactly the state that we're in. So why don't you notice the states that you're in? Well, you don't notice the same conversations that come up because they can feel completely different depending on whether you feel calm, you feel tired, you feel confident, you feel insecure, you feel threatened. Literally exactly the same sentence. So before the next time you're feeling off and you respond to anything, notice how your body reacts. Your memories attach meaning and your emotional state decides what stands out. Think about those things for a second because there's different processes happening within us and therefore a different state of reality. So what we call reality, it's not just what happens and it's a bunch of stuff that happens to us. It's what happened that's filtered through each and every one of us because our brain's the filter. Our brain is the solution and our brain is the problem that can keep returning in different forms, different formats, same people. Situations change, but then the patterns, they stay exactly the same. So you're not really reacting to what happened. You're reacting to what it meant to you in that state. Deep stuff, I know. But no, it gets deeper because you don't really experience reality directly. You don't really see the world as it is, where you think you've got like all of those powers. No, you see it through who you are in the moment. Two people, they can walk into exactly the same room. They can have two totally different experiences. Doesn't that blow your mind? You know, you can just see it that in the state when you're experiencing time and time delay. So you're waiting at a bus stop and you're like, oh my God, it's been 2 minutes, not even, it's 1.5 minutes, but you like to be optimistic, right? And that seems like an hour. And then you're sitting there with the hottest person you've ever met and you're like 2 hours has gone by and you're like, it's been 5 minutes. Can we just hang out some more? No. One person, they see opportunity in a situation. Another person sees judgment. The room doesn't change, their state change. So what does that mean? It means your brain experiences reality dependent on whether you feel safe, whether your behavior is neutral, whether you can even stay neutral. Can you stay neutral? Can you stop feeling insecure? Can your behavior feel personal? Is behavior personalized? It all depends on your nervous system, your beliefs, your past, your current mood, and how much of it you notice, how much effort you've put into noticing it, how much facts you can associate to this meaning. And these facts, they still matter, but they don't matter at the end of the day because it's not about pretending that your reality is imaginary or that you can control your reality. It's about understanding that your view on reality is always filtered. Therefore, it's plastic. And therefore, a more honest sentence might be not, that's just how it is, but that's how it appeared to the state that I was in. Therefore, we can have more compassion for others as well. When we sit there and we try to think everyone should feel exactly like how I should feel, well, you know what? Their events can be different. The events can be the same, but their states can be different. And while that experience seemingly should be the same, it is completely different. And when you stop thinking about just yourself, you can notice that outwards as well. You can notice these recurring structures, these patterns, these loops. They don't begin with an action. They actually begin much earlier. In fact, maybe from when we're infants and born, maybe before that, who knows? I'm not going to get that weird though. I'm going to go and simplify it, and loops are simple. They're an impulse. That causes a state, an interpretation, a choice that you make, an action, an outcome, and then a new state. What does that even mean? Well, it means an impulse can be a message, it can be a look, it can be a bill, it can be a delay, a thought, a memory, even a feeling in your body, even a sexy feeling in your body. That state comes in, you feel calm, you feel overwhelmed, some complexities happen, and then more complexities, you're like, oh, I'm not well rested enough, I'm exhausted, I don't know how to behave this way, or I'm feeling really secure and I'm threatened, and that builds up what happens in the fabric of our reality. So that state, and the more understanding we have to that happening, it shapes the meaning that you give to any given situation. So from that meaning, choices appear. We're able and gifted to have choice in life. Sometimes it's conscious, most of the time it's unconscious. You know, don't flatter yourself. We all suffer from it and we all get sucked in to these patterns. So what happens? We withdraw, we attack, we avoid, we over-explain, we try to control, we fight, we hide, we say yes when we mean no, we say no when we mean yes, we sit there and we put others in jail. I don't know, all this kind of stuff happens. But what I'm trying to say is that choices become actions based on this complexity of the state. These actions, they create outcomes in your life, you know, cause and effect. And the outcomes, they create a new state. And the loop begins again. We're just like AI. We have goals and loops and we're bound to them. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when you can't escape patterns, and you feel so powerless, well, it's time to understand that you are in a certain state and that you can change your state. State of what? State of mind, state of living. I mean, I don't know, state of the country that you're living in. If you're living in a country that has state, I'm not going to pretend to understand how countries and governments work. I'm just trying to decipher how patterns work. And the patterns, they're not just one continuous bad moment. It's this system, because your brain's like an operating system, like a filter that keeps running until you can actually see it. It's actually there for our own good. These repetitions and these patterns are there for our own good. But the action is usually the end of a pattern, not a beginning. And that's the autopilot. So why does this even matter? You know, why would state be the most important part of recognizing the pattern and the key to changing it? Well, most people, they focus on behavior, strict diets, strict ways of thinking, more discipline. I need to stop overthinking. I need to react better. I need to pray more. All of those things are great. But by the time that behavior and that complexity of language appears, so much has already happened inside you. Your body's reacted. The state has already shifted. You gave the situation meaning. Your choices already became smaller. On a quantum level, you've already shifted into that same timeline over and over again. So that's why changing the action alone feels like you're just fighting yourself at the end of the process. I mean, sometimes even literally in the mirror. Have you ever smashed the mirror with your fist? No, and I don't recommend it. But when you're rested, you're not going to behave like that. You're going to be more patient. When you're exhausted, you might want to break everything, including the very fabric of reality. But even the smallest things, they can feel like an attack and they can wear you down. So when you truly feel confident, you see everything as possible. When you feel ashamed, well, you see everything in this hyper fixated way. You have judgment. It feels like it's everywhere. You see a group of people laughing, you know, that you don't even know. And you're like, oh, they must be laughing about this way that I think, and they know about that mirror that I smashed earlier. But no, it's not about that. What I'm trying to say is the world is a mirror reflection of the state that you're in. So the world out there might not have changed per se because your state hasn't changed what you're able to see. These threatened states, well, they reduced 10 possibilities out there that you see into 2. Think of poker. Think of a terrible, terrible poker player. They get the best cards. They get all excited. They start over speaking. A seasoned poker player learns to observe, not to directly enter the fight, not to disappear. They enter it from a different way. First of all, it's observation, and they can control how they might choose to react, to reject, Anyway, I'm going off on tangents here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this observation of the state doesn't change just how you feel. It's not just about your feelings, like, no, my feelings. No, it changes the very choice that you can even imagine, the very fabric of reality itself. It's how we create the life that we live in. And I mean, this can be uncomfortable, you know, it can be wishy-washy. It can also be extremely empowering from where your power comes back to you, even if you've had a lifetime of complete chaos and confusion, because not everything has been in control. And repeating patterns, they often create the evidence that keeps them alive, and we use that evidence to justify the life that we've lived in whatever sense, from a victim mentality to somebody who really believes in themselves, or somebody who really believes people always leave me alone. Why? Because I'm weird and I talk about state and all of this stuff. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, that belief in yourself is what makes people either feel rejected or guarded, because everything is, well, what is this state? Without going into too much complexity, it's simply an impulse, and that impulse is like a signal. But these people who aren't aware of that, because they're aware of their own state, they feel it. They notice even your delayed replies, your change in tone every moment, the fact that you're holding your hands like this and trembling in the corner. I don't know, I'm just giving like examples. Maybe you've been like this, and maybe you thought that's natural behavior and whatever, you know, has justified it. But natural behavior starts to actually just look at the way that we change. Nature's always changing. And so when those people, they become cold, testing, controlling, distant, well, it doesn't have to always be like that, because patterns don't really observe the outcome. They're just patterns, and we're all participating in it. You could be a different person in a moment, and different person, same pattern, different job, same pattern, different city, same pattern. I mean, you can't escape from it, but you can know that you can change your very structure of it. And sometimes patterns aren't predicting your future, they just help to create it. They're not your personality, they're just what we often mistake as our identity. We say, I am anxious, I am controlling, I'm bad with money, I'm unlucky in love, I'm unable to be whatever, you know, whatever it might be. But the moment you say, I am, and I can do it, and you start empowering yourself through this, is the moment you start noticing those patterns and actually make some kind of quantum shift inside of yourself. You see what I mean? It's not about identifying with who you were. It's about realizing that identifying in general is a deep and underlying pattern within my life. And you can ask yourself, what pattern am I expressing literally right now? And just sit there with it. I mean, that question becomes really obvious when we do it over and over again, and it becomes changeable. So instead of like saying you are so controlling, you know, you can just start saying all of these other things and not denying yourself the possibility of something just from vocalizing it before you've even had a chance to observe why you're doing it. To get out of the trap of it, because words are like magic, and these patterns are like the spell that weave that magic. And once you become aware of these patterns, you can change the story. You know, your life is filled with storytelling. This video is storytelling. Every single movie you've ever watched and person you followed, they're telling a story. Every person is living through a story, including you. Even if you think it's a really shit story, it's a story. And the beautiful thing about a story is that it can evolve. The story might just be, I have to do everything alone. I have to prove my value. This isn't like the same story in video games. These are not the kinds of stories I want to live. But these filters in your thoughts. And if your brain and your entire aspects that come into your life and these signals that cause these states to come up are filtered through these thoughts without you even noticing, then that's what your story becomes. These signals are affecting what you notice. Again, what you ignore, what you expect, who you're going to talk to, what you tolerate, what role you keep playing, what you can allow yourself to ask for, to charge, what you can allow yourself to imagine yourself to be before you've even decided what you can be. You know, story becomes your reality. So what story are you telling yourself right now that allows you or doesn't allow you to notice what behavior is it creating. Because sometimes your story is not simply describing your life. It's literally manifesting, organizing, repeating those patterns, putting you in that same state, that unconscious state or that conscious state of your life. The story you repeat over and over again is the same one that you look for in evidence to prove in your life. So there is hope. There is hope. You can change. Oh my God. I mean, that should be obvious anyway. You know, you were born a tiny little baby, I think, unless you're Benjamin Button or something, and now you've changed into the adult or the whatever state that you're in. But all of this reality is much more plastic than this linear notice of one thing from another. Change doesn't really begin when you've reached your destination. It's the ongoing story of noticing your patterns. And most people, they only become aware at the end when they die and they turn into some electroplasma ghost or whatever, you know, whatever cartoon description you can think of that goes up to the heavens and the stars and they become aware of everything. But I'm not going to go down that track. I'm just going to say people spend their whole life judging themselves and they only become aware at the end. And at first, when you first start to practice this, you might only notice a pattern until you finished it. This is why like meditation is good. You know, you sit there and you can go, oh, I've been listening to the same weird words over and over pop up in my head when it should be so easy to not do anything. I mean, that should be an indication first and foremost when you got that monkey mind going on that you're constantly being fed interpretations by this mind. And even the fact that you can observe it means there is a differentiation between the mind that filters these words and the observer. So then you can have a choice. You can start to notice that choice and interpret it in a different way. And eventually the state changes before another behavior either repeats or begins. So when you feel yourself asking, what state am I in right now? How am I feeling? Don't mix it up with what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Am I afraid? Am I lonely? Am I poor? Am I rich? Am I ugly? Am I going to be successful in this? Just simply say, I am observing what I am. And what is that observation? What is the quality of that observation? What is the quality of that feeling within myself? You know, within my heart or within my shoulders slunched in or within my whatever. I was about to get weird, but like, you know, there's always these feelings within your body and just noticing them gives you more options, whatever your goals might be. Awareness gets really powerful when it's aware of itself before a reaction takes place, not only after it, not only in dramatic situations when you're just barely holding on to reacting because you've gotten so angry and you want to hit someone or something like that. I don't know why I keep giving these violent examples, but maybe it's my own backstory that I used to be a certain way or whatever. All I'm trying to say is we identify with the things that are most strikingly obvious to us, and we can notice them like echoes looping in a story that we tell and in patterns, especially when we go into autopilot, especially when we start to react in similar ways on the same things over and over again and we don't notice it. Imagine this. You're wanting to text someone and they've ghosted you and they haven't replied for 6 hours. You zoom out, you know, like you got control of the matrix, you just zoom out and you're like living in the Sims and you look down, something's going on in their life. But because you've already reacted so badly within yourself, your reality has already put you in this state of rejection, of attaching meaning to that. You think they don't care about you. You think all of this crap that's going on. And at the end of the day, it's not really like that. And if you actually take control more and more of these situations, you start to see that you can actually influence more control and more power over whatever happens in your life through those interpretations, through those awarenesses of the state, through those contacts that you make with the filter side of your brain, that monkey mind, that's always telling you that you're you, but really, I mean, it's just like, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. It's like, who are you in there telling me that I'm like this? You know, what is this mind that we've been gifted and cursed with over and over again? And past this, what I'm trying to say is, have more of an association with the feelings that link up with that monkey mind within you, that cause a certain state to be positive or negative, constructive or destructive, meaningful or meaningless, chaotic or calm and in control. And that is the true power, when a feeling can be real and noticed without any kind of meaning being attached to it, being one sense of truth. We have this choice. We can widen that choice. So next time you're triggered, you know, the first choice that you see is usually the choice that's easiest. It's that pattern that you already know. It's like this: the more important something is to you and the more happy you are with it, just try to see what you'd feel like in the most unhappiest state of that. Think of a relationship. Relationships aren't just defined by the happy moments. When stuff is going bad in a relationship, when things are going wrong, when there's problems in there, how do you react? How does that partner react? And how much space do you have to react? These strong emotional states are what make your options and your potential feel larger or smaller. Instead of just asking, what should I do? I'm cursed. What choices? I don't have any choices. I live in public housing. I'm watching YouTube videos from some weirdo for advice. You could pause. You could ask yourself a question. You could say, why am I doing this in the first place? It's to observe. How do I actually feel like when I can empower myself and change the meaning rather than the same pattern? Why? Because nothing's happened yet in life. I mean, you could change your entire physical state before you've made that decision, and you can become so in control of these responses within your body, they affect your health. Sometimes the healthiest choice is simply just delaying an automatic instinctual pattern that feels easy, especially when those patterns are triggering. You don't really have to know the perfect move. You just have to stop repeating automatic ones and start noticing that they're automatic. You don't have to be perfect, you know. It's a work in progress. You can't always just think your way out of a state if your entire reality is stuck in it. And the intelligent move isn't more thinking, it's noticing, it's breathing. It's realizing you're electrical in nature, your nervous system is either charged or depleted, your body runs in this symbiotic connection with all of reality. So of course, if you're going to be exhausted and if you've been used to just being overloaded with emotion and with fear and with chaos and anxiety and the people around you, you're going to normalize that. But then you'd ask yourself, why am I doing things the same way? How would it be if I was calmer? How would it be if I just pushed and stopped avoiding that maybe reaction from others, from myself, from my mind that is telling me the same things, and actually just sat there with it? And before you believe all of the bullshit that you think, just check where it's come from. Just check in with yourself. Here's a few simple daily things that have helped me. I've chosen a moment and I've walked backwards through that, and I've seen a loop and a pattern, and I've seen it over and over and over again. And instead of feeling it and analyzing it from an emotional point of view, I've just seen that I've reached an outcome and an end result because the same thing happened over and over again. So the action that created it, as that signal came in, I can start to notice, and I can see the original impulse. I can notice the state, the mind state. So seeing a pattern and shifting your mindset towards that pattern can really shift your entire reality. It can really shift who you are, because as we know, that same pattern can be interpreted by two different people in two completely different ways in the same seemingly liminal real space. The same room I was talking about, where one person enters, they're anxious, one person enters, they're confident. Completely different outcomes occur. And the observation of that outcome, seeing yourself, the higher version of yourself outside of just the same version that's entered the room, that creates space in that room, whatever that room is. I'm just using room as a analogy here for all of the energetic space, and all of that space that can create choice, and all of those choices that change action. So what I'm trying to say is you can't really change a pattern that you're still calling your reality, that you're still sitting there and telling yourself is one way, that you're rigid in, because those patterns are not bound to us. And there is always a breadcrumb of trails that you can follow that are underneath all of that. And I guess what I'm trying to say from the biggest takeaway from this entire video is that seeing your patterns, observing your state, is the first real step forward to making any kind of meaningful change in your life, and any kind of control that's not just the type of control that instantly satisfies your ego and what you've told yourself that you can be. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, we can go into so many other things, but let's start there.